we've gotten so burdened and heavy laden with all the things that we have picked up, all of the expectations, assignments, things that we think that we're supposed to carry, that it's so familiar we don't even notice the weight of them anymore. And it's time for them to come off. And notice when the option of that coming away feels like you can get a breath again.
You are listening to the Famous at Home podcast with Dr. Josh and Christy Straub.
Because when it's all said and done, we all want to know that we were famous at home. Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. Christy, how are you doing today?
Well, I have my therapy pup here with me. No, he's not really.
He's not really a therapy pup, but he does offer some therapy. But he doesn't just offer therapy, he also leads you to want to get therapy sometimes.
Sometimes. He has a bit of anxiety himself. You know, this is, if you're watching on YouTube, you might be able to see his little head here. He is our golden doodle copper who, if you've read What Am I Feeling? There is a book written about him. Well, at least
he's a character in the book. It's not about him. But
it's gone to his head a little bit. And he knows it. No, he's actually with us right now because we have some people doing some work on our little cabin, our little house in the big woods, and we're getting real lights in the kitchen, like real lights. That's just going to be real nice to see when you cook. But he's anxious because there's people here. So he's
trying
with us
to
today.
Yeah, he's hanging out up here.
He's I'm not sure if he's therapizing me or I am him, but you know.
I hope you're enjoying your fall. I don't know where you're at right now, but it's middle of October and it's absolutely gorgeous in many parts of the United States where we are. And I hope you're enjoying your fall weather. You're getting out. We're in a season right now, and this is what we're talking about today. And it's funny because part of this comes out of a book we've been reading, Essentialism, which was gifted to us by a new friend at a church that I spoke at back in August. And it's golden for the season of life that we're in, the questions we're asking about what are we doing? What is essential in our lives, in our personal lives, and then also with our business and our ministry, and where do we want to be? What do we want to be doing in the days ahead? And John Eldridge talked about this in one of his videos a few weeks ago, is what are your marching orders? Like, you know, It's not just about going, the thing that he was talking about is so many of us in the culture that we live in and the chaos and all that, we just, it's like people just want to go away to Bora Bora or, you know, wherever, and they just want to get away, Costa Rica, and live in the middle of the beach somewhere, or live in the middle of the mountains somewhere, and just, you know, wait until everything falls apart and just, you know, live they're longing for Eden before Eden is here. And what we are called to do is we are to have our marching orders. And I think for many of us, and this is for us included, we're asking God, what are our marching orders? What is it that you would have us to be doing? And what are the appropriate next steps? And many of you have already seen our journey and heard about our current journey that we're on. And we're asking, the amazing part about this, and many people ask us, kind of what's ahead, what are we doing? And what's fascinating about it is the Lord has completely not shown us what's fully ahead. He's given us some insight into what's ahead, and we're moving forward and we're making decisions about things that are ahead. But he has literally spoken to us day by day. Like, you walk with me, listen to me in obedience, and I will show you each day what you're to be doing. So what we're trying to do then is we're trying to sit with the Lord and just hear from him each day, because this is, and I don't know that there's anything better than that, because that's what he's called us to, but we're putting everything on the table, like everything on the table. And if you think in the natural, if you think like objectively speaking, you know, one of the things that you could do is literally take sticky notes and write activities or everything that is consuming your week, and look at your week and go, what is most taxing on our family right now? And that's one of the things we've had to do, is we've had to look and go, okay, where are we overwhelmed? Where are we feeling like there's not enough time in the day? What do we have to do? And you take sticky notes, and you can do it for your personal life, your business, whatever it is. and you put them on the table, and you start, and you meet as a family and go, what needs to go and what needs to stay, and start processing that, because that's really what this is about, is looking at your life and asking God, what are our marching orders? This is what it is for us, is what are our marching orders? Because that's the purpose. That's the purpose that's greater than our family, is what are our marching orders? And that's what's going to make your kids come alive too, because you're paying attention and prioritizing what's most important.
So I was just listening to you. It's so good. I was actually, what I was reminded of was the story of Noah. And I was watching a VeggieTales episode about Noah with our 3-year-old the other day. You
were not. You just admit it. You like watching VeggieTales, and
You're right.
I caught you after the kids were in bed watching VeggieTales.
I turned it on, and I love that one. I'd actually never seen it, but it was, I don't know. It was such a poignant, sometimes like kids' stories or kids' books, or it's like the way they present it, it feels like it's new to you. Obviously the story is not new to me, but the way they did it was. And what I think struck me was like how crazy it was, how absolutely crazy it was, and how clear the instructions were from God to Noah about what he was to do to prepare. And yet he didn't have much detail. Like he had detail in terms of like what to build, but I mean in terms of like what's actually coming. He didn't know, like, I just can't, the chaos of it all. And like actually when the rains came, it's like 40 days and 40 nights, like absolute terror, like how awful, how scary this would be. And then thinking about how his family was impacted by this. Then what happens when you're literally the only people left on the planet? Like he was given some information, but not all of it. And I think that's what I was so struck by, was like, isn't that so real for all of us following God, and sometimes we don't even feel like we get some instruction, where it's just like, you're just like, God, where are you? Why aren't you speaking to me? But then there's times where we'll get some, but not all. And it's like part of the revelation, but never all of it, because it's this daily walk by faith. And anyway, it just struck me, and it felt so significant that I think, especially in this just season of life for all of us on the earth, I think there's so much that's been veiled and hidden behind a curtain that we can all sense something is just, the earth is stirring, and yet we don't know the specifics. We don't know what it's going to look like.
Well, and I feel like what's fascinating about that too is, and I don't know if I mentioned this a couple weeks ago or not in the podcast, but it's been something that I've written in my journal and I've been paying attention to, is Solomon. There was a point in there, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to butcher this, but there was a point at which it said that like God spoke to Solomon, I think 2 times. And you think about it and you're like, oh my gosh, like in his, like, and then there was another moment where David said, you spoke to me once, or it was something to that nature, where you realize God shows up for these men in the Old Testament. They didn't have the Holy Spirit with them, right? So God shows up and speaks a word to them. And yet throughout the entire Bible, the theme is do not forget. Remember, 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 do not forget, do not forget. Remember, remember, remember. And we are such forgetful people that we forget. It's like we hear a word from the Lord, and a week later, it's like, God, why aren't you speaking to me again? Or God, I don't see that I'm supposed to move this way. Or I think we live in instant gratification culture, which makes it even worse for us and in the Western world. But yet we have Holy Spirit with us.
So waiting is so hard. Like
waiting is so hard. Yet we have Holy Spirit with us, and yet we are so, it's like, God, show up for me. God, show up for me. And I think so often what ends up happening is we have so drowned him out by all the things we're adding into our lives, and all the things where we take control and we're trying to do it, that, and I'm going to be the first to admit that pulling back and actually stripping things away is absolutely scary. Like it is scary to strip that away and not actually know, okay, Lord, like, what are you doing? And we've done that. Like we have stripped things away, and I'm starting to go, okay, all right, I'm with you, Lord. I don't know where you're taking us, but I'm okay. Like we're going to be okay. I'm going to try to remember. I'm going to try to remember. And that's where, for me, I've got to be in the Word every day. Because if I'm not in the Word every day, I quickly can spiral.
So it's just so real. It's like if it's not replacing our human thoughts, like I was reading this morning about truly like how futile our human thinking is. And you look over the course of human history, like just how twisted we get and how are left to our own devices. Like we are a mess. Like we are not good. And we like, did you say spiral? Is that what or was I just thinking? Like,
I don't know.
We spiral very quickly into just such dysfunction. Like we're just, it's, gosh, the fall really messed us up. So my point is that if we're not renewing our minds, that gets dangerous fast, because left to our own selves, we really think there is not good in us. This is not like, I think we want to believe that there's good in people. And I think the more life you live and people you meet, you realize at our core, we are so like, but for the grace of God, there go I. And I think there's just such a propensity toward darkness and decay and disorder and disease and dis-ease. We're not good on our own. And that's why we have to be renewing our minds.
This is what I find fascinating. Ecclesiastes is one of my favorite books in the entire Bible, if not the favorite. It is just full of wisdom. And he talks about the emptiness of work. And for what does a person get with all his work and all of his efforts that he labors at under the sun? For all his days are filled with grief, and his occupation is sorrowful. Even at night, his mind does not rest. This too is futile. And I'm like, this is the daily grind.
Yeah.
This is the busyness of the daily grind that we live in.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating for each of us to be able to go back and realize this. We are not the first people in human history to experience the daily grind. We've been experiencing it since the fall of mankind. And here Solomon is writing about it through all of Ecclesiastes. And I find it a very hopeful book, actually. I love, it's so funny, as a guy who writes books, in the very first chapter of Ecclesiastes, he says, what does a person gain for all of his efforts that he labors at under the sun? In chapter 1, he says, there's no remembrance of those who came before, and those who will come after. There will also be no remembrance by those who follow them. In other words, I wrote down here, your name will not be remembered. Like, you're eventually going to be forgotten on this earth. And yet we spend so much time trying to have our names be remembered. And it also says in chapter 1, of the making of books, there is no end. Like, you can write and write and write and write. Like, people are going to continue to write books and write books and write books. And therefore, where are we making our name known is in the book of life. Like, that we, there's so much reward in eternity. But in this earth, we spend so much time trying to be famous, trying to get our names known, trying to whatever we're trying to do. And I find this very freeing. I think that's why I love Ecclesiastes so much and then he says, and I could keep talking about this all day long, but this is how I filter out what it is are we doing? Like, what are we doing, and are we making an impact? And are the things that we are putting our plow to really harvesting the most fruit, harvesting the most crop for the kingdom of God? Is it really? Or are we spinning our wheels doing things on this earth? And, right after he says, how for all his days are filled with grief and his occupation is sorrowful. Then in verse 24, about chapter 2, there is nothing better for a person than to eat, drink, and enjoy his work. Even this is from God's hand. Because who can eat and who can enjoy life apart from him? I just think, and then there's so much about this. Here's what I have seen to be good. It is appropriate to eat, drink, and experience good, and all the labor one does under the sun during the few days of his life God has given him, because that is his reward. Mm-hmm. I feel like, furthermore, I'm just going to say this again. Furthermore, everyone to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also allowed him to enjoy them, take his reward, and enjoy in his labor. This is a gift of God. For he does not often consider the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. I am of the mindset that, and if you go through here, I literally wrote this down. I observed all the work God and concluded that a person is unable to discover the work that is done in his life. In other words, I wrote this: simplify and make your world smaller. Now, I think there's a degree to which making our world smaller, and this can be a conversation that we have, making your world smaller is what gives you the ability to enlarge your impact for the kingdom.
Well, and so what comes to me as you're talking about that is how also enticing it is to then think that your impact for the kingdom is measured numerically, or, as if this is, look at me, like the bigger the platform, the more the impact. Look what I've done. And I was reading today in Ephesians, I was talking about the good works, when it talks about how he has, like, the good works that were prepared for us in advance, which means we were created to do good works on this earth, for sure. There is a lane that is specific to each of us that we were created for, like the pocket, the place where we were, all our gifts, all our talents, all our hiccups and hang-ups and all of it have all been crafted so that we are placed in this one spot for the good works that he's already prepared for us before we were even born. So even the good works aren't really ours. Like, they're a gift that he's giving us in order to, what you're saying here, it's like find joy on this side. Like, this is our ability to step into the work of the Father he's already predestined. He's already written it out. We just get to step into it. And then this becomes part of the gift, part of the joy is being a part of his plan. But I think where we get so messed up is that we get so focused on the good works and, like, what are the good works we're supposed to do? Like, what is it that I'm assigned to do on this earth? Like, I can't screw this up. And I think the whole point is that we get so, even within kingdom, like Christendom, like within the kingdom, we're like, okay, so I'm anointed to do great works, and I know, but like I can't squander this. I can't mess it up. I can't, like, I have to use all my time. And so you see people trying so hard, and I like with such sincerity to, like, serve at the church and, in all these things, or serve in these places, or help these people. And it almost becomes this treadmill in of itself of, like, works, because I think, like, I'm supposed to do these good things and I can't miss them, as opposed to, like, what about my 3 children that I was given to raise? Like, what if that was the good works that had been predestined for me? And what if my impact is really small in terms of the earth? What if my impact is never seen? Like, no other human knows about it. What if I spend my whole life investing in these 3 children and my husband and my golden doodle, who's laying at my feet really sweet right now, by the way. What if that's my lot? What if that's my good works? And is that okay for me? Like, is that enough? Because there was a season where that was not enough for me. Like, that made my, like, oh my gosh, no. Like, I'm made for so much more. That was the belief. That was my fear. There was so much driving me toward, like,
I think we feed that, though, in Christendom.
We totally do. Like, we celebrate the people on the platform. We celebrate the big dramatic acts of faith and service. And I'm not saying they're not good. Like, I was actually listening to, so our church had a conference last month, I guess. And, Natalie Grant and Bernie Herms, Herms is their last name, they're married. But Natalie Grant is her name that everyone would know her by. they were ministering in their way, like through music. And I thought one of our pastors made this comment, which I thought was so profound. It was like, that right there is people in the pocket. Like they were created for that. That couple was created to do what they just did, to minister to the people. Don't try to be them. Like that's their pocket, and that's what they were created to do. What's yours? That wasn't what they asked, but that's what I'm asking today. It's like, then what's yours? Because we get you can look at that, and coming from Nashville, there's a whole city of people that probably want to be like them, that look at them and are like, yeah, that's it. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to be in Christian music or whatever. And I want to be a worship artist. I want to lead people in worship. And so they look at other people, and it's like, they want to sit in their spot. And I think the point is, you already have a spot and you don't even have to strive for it. It's already been written out for you. And what are the things that are clouding the way? Because I think that's, to circle it all back, that was what hit me this morning, was if these works have been already created for me to do, all I have to step in. What's my job? My job is to keep my eyes on the one and follow him, because that's the only way I'll find my way to that spot, and not on the good works. And so what are the things I keep trying to pack my life with to feel more secure? Like going back to what you were saying, like when you strip some of these things away and it starts to feel like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I without that? Who am I if I'm not doing this? And I think I've even felt that in these last few months of just some relative hiddenness, and I don't think that's on accident. I think this is where the Lord pulls us away for seasons to solidify who we are, away from any other external influence. And that's not been easy. Like, I've not been on social media. I haven't even really, like, we have family here. We don't have like friend community here. And if people are I realize people are listening and like, what are you talking about? We're living in Pennsylvania, in our little cabin, little house in the big woods for the last few months. It's been more than we've been here a few months now, and it's
about 7 weeks.
Yeah.
7 weeks. Yeah.
Almost 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And, so the stripping away of so much, like that obviously feels probably more real to us because of what we've just been through. But I think this is valid and true for all of us.
And we're getting ready to go to Tennessee again.
Yeah.
With our community, which I'm very excited about because I'm ready for community.
Oh, I am too. I am too. But I think there's these seasons, it's like your desert seasons. They're so important. And because it's stripping away all of the things we prop ourselves up with.
There's a quote.
And you're trying to find it.
And I'm trying to find, and I'm really struggling to find it.
Butcher it. Go ahead. Just try it.
Well, I don't even have the right person as I'm looking for it, but I will find it eventually. The whole point is that when we are in desert seasons, there's a place in which the hiddenness, I think, that you're talking about. I was just talking to a buddy of mine the other day about this, and he gave me a quote from one of the desert fathers, one of the, fathers in the faith, that it was just phenomenal. It was basically like when he has spent time alone in the desert, coming back, having been with Jesus so intimately, when he comes back, it's as if people, they have no idea. So they belittle what he's experienced.
Totally.
Because there's zero context.
Yeah.
And I think those hiddenness years or months or weeks or whatever, they're very difficult. I have a buddy of mine who's doing the exact same thing we are in a lot of ways, is stripping back. We were talking about this, and he said it's the hiddenness. Mm-hmm. And as men, it's this, we're drivers, we're visionary, my buddy and I, we're visionaries. We want to keep moving forward. And yet there's seasons where God pulls us back. He keeps us hidden and we don't know why, but it's so difficult because our flesh and the way we're driven, what we're given, their gifts or strengths are pushing to go forward. And here's why this is important to me. I mean, it's important to me because we're building the kingdom of God. It's important to me because we want to stay the course. I think it's also important to me because our children, there's a trickle-down effect. And I'm hearing this from Sissy Goff and David Thomas, our dear friends, and others. The epidemic, Dr. Jean Twenge out of UCSD, she talks about this. There's a trickle-down effect of anxiety and busyness on kids today coming from us as parents. Mm-hmm. And I think we as parents flood our lives with so much stuff because we have FOMO, we have a fear of missing out, that we don't want to remain hidden. It's scary. It brings up everything, every insecurity in us. And what ends up happening is our kids feel the weight of that because what we're doing is we're keeping busy in the name of giving our kids activities or giving our kids opportunities or whatever that might be. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Please hear me say, I think we have to be diligent about praying through what are the opportunities that we're giving them, how are we pursuing their strengths, and making sure that we are, for me, this is Christy and I living our message. Like, we had this very honest conversation this week about, okay, we need to make sure that our children are prioritized. As like Christy was saying, like, what if this is our ministry? Those 3 kids, those 3 kids are what we are to be, and Timothy talks about this. It talks about this in 1 Timothy. Like, if you can't take care of your own family, how can you take care of lead the church? Mm-hmm. And so, man, I look at the number of people who are known for having incredible relationships with God who are just not good with their families. I mean, and you see it through Scripture. I mean, look at David, for crying out loud. The type of father that he was, and then the husband that he was, everything. Like, it's kind of
disappointing, really.
It is, and it's fascinating to me how we tend to do that. We get so busy that we neglect the very gifts that God has given us to steward well, and that's what Famous at Home is all about: is making sure that we steward those gifts. The people that God has put into our lives and very, very well, so that we give them a purpose greater than themselves and that we show them how to pursue that purpose that is bigger than themselves without, and this is a very difficult thing to do. Please don't hear me say this is easy to do at all. It's not easy to do. But pursuing your purpose with your gifts and strengths without getting it mixed up with the idols of the world. And that's because all of a sudden we start getting the accolades, and it's very easy to do that in the flesh when the Spirit of God is not in you. And so I just think it's important for us to be living this way. So putting those things on the table that need to be ironed out and fleshed out for your family. And I think it's an important time to be talking about it, because here we are in the middle of the fall. You're halfway through the first semester, really. A lot of us are hitting fall break and that type of thing in school, and you're starting to look at things and going, okay, what might we need to cut?
Yeah, we've had some great conversations about this lately. And I think one thing that was really helpful, and I'm thinking of 3 different instances where one was with my daughter, one was with you, and one was with a client. And I'm going to sort of use them all simultaneously, because I realized, such a great indicator of what is too heavy for you. Like, it's too much. It's not fitting who you're suited to be. Like, it needs to go. One real simple one was with my daughter. We went to a fair, and her grandparents were staying later. We were going home to take the little guy home to bed. And they were like, "Do you want to stay with us?" And she's like, I don't know what to do. And I said, "Kennedy, it's your choice. Like, you choose. It's totally up to you. You can stay with them. You can come with us. It doesn't matter to me. You pick." And she was so torn, like, could not make a decision. "But Ma, I want to go, but I kind of want to stay." And I was like, "Okay, Kennedy, I want you to stay." And I was like, "How did that feel?" I told you something, like, I made the decision for you. And then feel that in your body? Does your stomach drop like, ugh? Or are you like lighter where you're like, yep, that's it. And so notice that, like, notice if, we just made a decision a little bit ago about something to take off Josh's plate. And I said it to him and he goes, oh, I just feel relieved. And like, you feel that come off, you literally can feel it come off your body. That's when you know it was too much. Like that's not your lane. That can be removed. And I did with a client, same thing. She works in a world, carries a lot of heavy things. And I said, what if instead of that, you chose, and we like narrowed it down to like, this is who you are. And we made it very narrow and very specific and very small. And she started crying and she just said, it just feels like me. But I felt like I had to do all these other things and take all these other things on because, she was good at it. Like, people all celebrated her for all these things that she was really good at. And yet that's not what she wanted to do. She wanted to do this very specific thing that she was created for. And so we said, so from now on, you say, I am this and I specialize in this, like this very narrow subset. And it was just like with tears and lightness, it was like, could that be true? Like, would it be possible that I could just do that? And what I thought was so cool was the thing that, for you, for her, the thing that feels so relieving. Oh, if I could just do that. For the rest of us, like looking at you, like that's a really heavy, intense thing. And yet it feels light to you. Like, and just to pay attention to that, because so often we've gotten so burdened and heavy laden with all the things that we have picked up, all of the expectations, assignments, things that we think that we're supposed to carry, that it's so familiar we don't even notice the weight of them anymore. And it's time for them to come off. And notice when the option of that coming away feels like you can get a breath again.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty clear indicator.
I felt the breath. I hope you're feeling the breath. We're going to end there.
Mm-hmm.
If a group coaching program would it be of interest to you, we would highly encourage you to sign up at the interest list in the show notes today. That is one thing that's on the table that we are praying through. And we even ask a couple questions in that interest list of you to give us feedback of questions you might be asking and insights that you might have, so that it'll help us formulate what that group would look like. And so we're excited about that opportunity, and it's always a joy to get to journey with you. Keep in mind, until next week, that the greatest red carpet you will walk is through your front door.
Keep being famous at home. We love you.